What's going on, guys? You're listening to Nick, and this is WSOU. I am here with Jared, the guitarist from Forevermore. What's going on, man?
Not too much, just sitting here with some green tea, hanging out.
All right, living it up.
Oh, yeah.
So the biggest thing for you guys right now is I already got to hear it. I got to hear a link Jerry sent me of the new album you guys got coming out late July, Integral. Tell me your expectations of this. It's not out yet. You've got a couple singles out, so what's kind of the vibe so far with what people have heard, what you hope people get out of it, and where you think it's going to take the band?
Well, it's always hard to say until the day finally comes,
right.
When the next comes out. But, we've released 2 songs so far, and the response has been really good. It seems like it's gained the attention of, some new fans and also appealed to a lot of our old fans, which is good. And I think the concept behind the album, which is pretty involved, and we haven't put, a ton of information out there about it, but I think it's caught some attention, and I think people are pretty interested in that. So I think it's looking good.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That was something that I was really interested in and wanted to hear a little bit more about, was how it's not... Would you call this a concept album necessarily, or no?
Yeah, that's how I thought of it.
Okay. So can you kind of explain a little bit more behind where exactly the concept's going?
Sure, yeah. It's a really complex thing. I won't go into all the detail of it, but just kind of from a bird's eye view, it's about something called spiral dynamics, which it sounds, it's what the heck does that mean for sure? But so I first heard about it. There's this podcast. I'm a really avid podcast listener.
Okay.
And, there's this podcast called The Liturgist, which is there's a guy, Michael Gungor. He's in a band called Gungor. They're sort of a Christian-ish rock band. And then there's this other guy, Science Mike, and they have a podcast together. And so they had an episode about spiral dynamics, and that's where I first heard about it. But it's basically a model for understanding the development of human consciousness.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of, what does all that mean?
Yeah.
So to boil it down, the basic idea is that as humans, we go through these stages of ways of thinking. So it's there are these major shifts in how we see the world that we go through. And I think one of the most interesting things about the whole idea is that when you look back in human history, you see these stages arising one at a time,
right,
within humanity, but they also still occur within every individual person. Mm-hmm. So on an individual level, we all go through the exact same series of stages according to this theory, this model. Right. So I just think it's super interesting. When you look into the model, when you start to understand it, it can kind of change how you see things, how you see things in the world. It is just a model or a theory, and models are inherently incomplete and everything, but it is really interesting and eye-opening in a lot of ways to just kind of look and see, maybe this has explained some of what's going on here, with a lot of different things
right
in the world today.
So has that been something that now you've been looking into a lot, that you have noticed it more than ever before? Maybe the change in you as a person yourself, or just in the world itself as a whole.
Oh, absolutely. There are the more we've been talking about the idea and trying to put together the stuff that we want to release and try to place yourself on this developmental theory or whatever, although it is that songs with lyrics, there's a few interlude tracks and a transition sort of track, but the main songs, they each correlate with one of the stages of spiral dynamics. And in spiral dynamics, each of these stages, each of these major ways of thinking and the different developmental stages are assigned a color. And the colors, they don't mean anything. It's just to have a name to refer to them.
Oh, okay.
yeah, so there's no like deeper meaning behind the colors, but so each song on the record correlates with one of these colors,
Right.
through the stages. And just to make it more of like a more like personal or relatable, we sort of told this story through the perspective of like a man who has been granted immortality. And so he experiences all of these different stages throughout human history, like each of these colors. So, like, you watch as he goes through each of these ways of thinking. Like, he was in that period of history where the color arose.
Right.
So he's, like, totally immersed in it. And so you get, like a limited, it's really just a kind of a taste of what each of the colors is about, because each of the colors is kind of complex, like, when you really dig into it. But you get the kind of basic gist of it from, like, his perspective within the color.
Right. Okay. That's really cool. And that was kind of something I was thinking about as well. Would that kind of relate the whole concept to the whole theory about, like, you change as a person, like, every 7 years? Would that kind of relate back to this?
Huh.
Have you ever heard of that?
I don't think I have.
Oh yeah, I've heard a couple different people have talked to me about. There's like this concept where every 7 years you kind of change, your outlook or your interests, and you just kind of go through, like, I don't know, some kind of psychological change. I've heard a lot, and that kind of got brought up in my mind when I looked into the concept behind how you said, it's kind of about, revolving and the constant change, but yet kind of still sticking to, prior cycles. So I don't know, I kind of connected them a little bit. I didn't know if that had something to do with it or not.
Not directly. I mean, I haven't heard that. I mean, it makes me think of, I have heard something to the effect that, like, we replace the majority of the cells in our body every 7 years, but that's a different sort of thing. But yeah, like, so I'm just trying to make the connection off the top of my head. Like, roughly, the rough way it goes in spiral dynamics is the first stage is sort of like infancy, and then the next stage arises within, like, early childhood, and then kind of towards, like, preteen years would be the next stage, and then the next one is kind of usually in, like, more middle of the teenage years. So I'm just thinking off the top of my head, it might not exactly line up with, like, a 7-year cycle, but it does sound like a similar sort of idea.
Okay. Because that's what I kind of thought it was similar to. But what I also wanted to know was, I thought it was interesting that the release date for Integral is actually the exact same date as Telos, just 2 years later. That was, I'm assuming, was that on purpose or was that coincidental?
It was kind of coincidental. It was like, that was an option.
Okay.
And we were leaning towards it, and then we kind of thought, oh, hey, that would line up with when we released Telos, so that's kind of cool. So yeah, it was mostly coincidental.
Okay. Now, where do you see the connection between these two as a band progressing?
I see it as a major progression in terms of, like, a big part of it is the concept, and that, like, the last album and really, all of the stuff we've done in the past hasn't been super cohesive in this way. Like, I mean, I guess that's kind of the whole point of doing a concept album, is to have it all kind of tied together.
Right.
But I don't know. For me, it's just been way more fun and interesting to just, like, have this really big problem or, like, task of trying to tie everything together, and with this, like, I don't know, it's the sort of thing that I would be interested in anyway. So to be able to, like, apply my interest to, like, the actual lyrical content, because, like, in the past I've never been involved in the lyrical content at all.
Okay.
And I mean, on this record I didn't write very much of the lyrics, but I at least sort of helped to guide it along.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's a big step up, and also, musically, I think it's the best stuff we've ever done for sure, but I might be biased.
Is that something you want to push for more as you progress as a band, is the songwriting aspect?
You mean in terms of the music itself?
Yeah, like, is that something that, like you said, like, you've never really been a part of, actually writing the lyrics, and, this album, you were kind of, you had an influence maybe, but it wasn't your what you delved a lot of time into. Is that something that you're interested though in the future of getting more of a hand in?
I don't know. Maybe I've always been heavily involved with the writing the music.
Okay.
And lyrics are it's a weird thing for me. Lyrics are the last thing I pay attention to when I listen to music, which I know I am very much in the minority in that regard. But so I don't know. It's just I did contribute a little bit of lyrics on this one, and it was very weird for me to try to get in that headspace just because I've never really done it. But I mean, it was interesting. I don't know if I'm any good at it, but yeah, in the future, I might try to dabble a little bit more.
Okay. And that was another thing too, is as a band, like you said, the progress from just the last two albums, I think it's really interesting to look back all the way, from Moths and Rust till now. It almost to me sounds like it's two different bands, which I think is pretty interesting that, you guys can still, stick to your, the sound that you want and progress as a band, and not stay, the same sound, the same record every time, and still put out really great stuff.
Right on, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's always been certain elements of Forevermore that we really wanted to maintain, as our tastes change and our writing abilities change. And I think just if I were to try to distill those down, a big part of it would be intensity. I think right from the start, even with Moths and Rust, a lot of intensity was a big part of our sound, and that was a lot of the early bands that inspired us to start getting into this kind of music. That was a big part of what drew us to it, was just being consistently pretty intense, and just having a balance between some technicality and just enjoyability, I guess. For me, the heavy bands that I've always liked the most haven't been the craziest, most technical bands out there, or the catchiest, most radio-friendly bands out there. It's been the bands that have been the best at trying to combine both worlds or meet somewhere in the middle.
Right.
So that's always been kind of my mindset. I think it's an interesting challenge to try to sort of merge the two sides of the spectrum.
Okay, because that was something that a lot of, especially I see it now a lot in the metalcore scene. I guess I can get your take on that as well, is if you look back, at the metalcore scene from, probably 2008, 2009 to now, I can't think of too many, it seems like the whole scene itself has kind of transformed. There's a lot of scenes where the sound kind of can stay the same, and then maybe bands change it a little bit here and there. But it seems like the metalcore scene itself, there's been a lot of progression the last few years. Everyone from, you guys, there's, even, The Color Morale, August Burns Red. It seems like, even, every side of the spectrum of the metalcore scene, it just seems like the sound of 2008 is, almost a whole different sound than what it is now. If you said metalcore and you showed, two different songs from a band to someone, they may not think that they're from the same band. I just see a very big change in the scene itself in the last few years.
Yeah, I think that kind of is a general trend in the world today, is things changing at a faster and faster rate.
Right.
I think a lot of it just has to do with technology and the internet. People are exposed to so much more music now, and it's so much easier to get your hands on music, and just everything changes hands so quickly, and you have to adapt or die out, basically. And I think it fuels the need to constantly innovate at a faster and faster rate. And like I said, I don't think that just applies to music, but everywhere.
Okay. And another thing I wanted to touch on was the touring that you guys are doing on pushing the new album. I know you guys are going out actually very shortly with Kingdom of Giants and Darkness Divided. And will this be, how are you doing the set for this? Is this going to be a heavy favorite on the new album?
It's going to be about half and half.
Okay.
With, new and old stuff.
Right.
I don't know if I think I'm trying to think off the top of my head. We're playing 4 songs off the new record, and then a mix of some old stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, we like to. We know that we're at this point in our career, so to speak. We're going to be playing for people who haven't heard us before. So we just kind of want to give them a taste of everything that Forevermore has put out, I guess. Right.
Okay. Now, I know that lineup itself is pretty awesome. Is there anything coming around the East Coast soon? Because I know this is mostly like a West and Southern kind of tour.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll be back there, but by the end of the year.
Right, nothing you can say, right?
Right. Exactly.
That's pretty cool, though. I'm looking forward to that. From what I know, you guys were here not too long ago, though, right?
Yeah. Man, tours become a blur. Like, everybody in my band gives me a hard time because I don't remember anything. In terms of shows, like, something will come up, like, remember when we played here and this happened, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I need at least 10 details about a show before it even comes from me. Like, oh yeah, I was there.
You're like the guy who forgets like what city you're in that day for that show.
I just get in the van, close my eyes, and until we get there, and just get on stage and play.
All right. Well, we'll wrap things up. Is there anything that you want to add?
Just our record. To reiterate, our record comes out July 22nd, and for anyone who's interested in the record or the concept, keep an eye out for. We're putting together some podcasts.
Oh, okay.
To sort of talk about it and go into it. It'll be our sort of maiden voyage into that world. We
awesome.
Don't know what we're doing, but it'll be fun. So yeah, check out the record.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me on.
Awesome.